The first thing I wanted to begin with was that there's this idea from Robert Greene that stuck with me, and it's stay stoic, stay dangerous. Now, you don't strike me as someone dangerous, but I do like the stoicism you carry because it gives you a very professional aura. Is that something that you've consciously kept, or it just is what it is?
No, that's definitely just is what it is. I mean, I think it's maybe just from reading, but thank you for that. I mean, yeah, I'm normally a big history fan, so maybe some of the stoicism or philosophy that I talk to you about sometimes in our conversations could come from there. But yeah, just a big fan of history.
Well, going back to that professionalism part, have you just always been professional, or have your experiences sort of crafted you in a way where you're like, I just got to keep it this way?
Well, I think all of us, start out as beginners that maybe aren't the most professional. And I was definitely the same way. And I think some people learn faster than others, understand it faster than others. And not to say that it's being more or less professional is even a good or a bad thing, but I think the mindset that I come with is based just largely on kind of what I face on a day-to-day, you know, what I would call like journey. And that is that I'm trying to do things and I'm trying to get somewhere and I'm trying to make an impact. And it's one of my fears is not making an impact. And so how I overcome that is by being professional and being deliberate and also trying to just do the most that I can possibly do so that I can make sure that I achieve my goals no matter what they are.
I like that. And I think professionalism, it certainly aids in making an impact. But then there's some times where, at least in my own experience, I feel like, man, I'm too professional and this is making me too serious. And that can sometimes feel like a disadvantage. Is that
Oh
something
yeah.
that you've ever experienced?
Oh yeah, I'm sure it is as well. I mean, I'm not a suit and tie kind of person, but being professional doesn't necessarily mean you have to be wearing a suit and tie every day. And sometimes when you're overdoing it, it can feel that way and it can come across in your energy and how you're meeting with the other client, depending on what kind of job you're doing or what kind of, relationship you're building. It really matters that you guys are kind of always on that same level and that you're not just bringing too much, what I would say inexperience is what it would show. And so if you're bringing too much of that inexperience to the table, it can sometimes be a bad thing. But, at the end of the day, it's whatever you think is right, And so if you're, feeling that it's the right occasion to wear or act certain ways, I mean, it's definitely the right way.
That part you said right there about inexperience at the table is interesting to me. What do you mean by that?
Well, sometimes I think it depends, inexperience is a good thing. It can also be a bad thing. Most of the times it's a bad thing, but sometimes it's a good thing. And when you're vulnerable and you're taking chances and you're trying to do things, you're going to be inexperienced. You're not going to be an expert in everything you do right away. It doesn't mean don't do them. And when you're around people that maybe have more experience than you, it's not always a bad thing to let them know that you need help, that you need someone that can maybe tell you what the next step is or where to focus, your attention at certain phases or things of that nature. People are very willing to help. You just have to kind of figure out a lot of times what their struggle was because then they'll offer the most value in solving the solutions that help them get to where they were. And a lot of people had different struggles. And so being inexperienced is fine. It's not this huge negative that it can be for some people. I think it's just knowing how to ask people the right questions so that get some experience on your side.
So earlier you said inexperience is often more of a bad thing than it is a good thing. I'm curious why. Why do you think so?
I mean, that's just you just don't know what you don't know. That's why it's a bad thing. You don't even know what questions to ask, let alone where the targets need to be sometimes. And that's probably the hardest part of, in my instance, and where I am right now, which is building and growing, my companies. It's one of the most valuable things is knowing what I don't even know. It's like I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly trying to figure out new things. And when I realize that there's a whole thing or a whole subject matter that I don't even know about, it's like, oh my goodness, I could have lived my whole life and never known about this, but this could be so impactful. So that's why an experience is a bad thing in most cases, because the more you know, the better.
Man, it's interesting the way you're putting it together because like in a way you're pointing out like hey it sucks, but at the same time you're like hey look at all the beautiful things you can attain because you don't know, because now you have an opportunity to learn. One of my favorite things in my life experiences is it's like to me it's like three stratospheres, you know? One of them is the things you know. The second one is the things you know you don't know. And then the third one is the things you don't even know. And
Hmm.
that last one is so beautiful because there's just so much out there. You know, there's something really beautiful about just not knowing yet, but the opportunity to know someday.
Oh yeah, of course. I agree with that 100%.
What do you think is the closest way to get to that third stratosphere?
Oh, well, it's by being curious, I would say. I think it's human nature. I mean, there's there's nothing that's going to make you ask more questions or do more work. It doesn't even feel like work when you're just being curious and chasing your passions or your interests. When you're doing something difficult, you always want to try and focus on the parts that you need to learn more about. Your greatest weakness is very, very important. It's even more important than your greatest strength, and that is that you want to make sure that you're knowledgeable enough on as many fronts as you can, so that you can be a valuable, whatever it is, you can be valuable to the company that you're trying to build, whether you're the owner, whether you're, the 1,000th employee hired. I think that's just something that's super important is, you know, always being curious and always trying to make sure that you're knowing as much as you can so that you can add value anywhere you can. And that'll allow you to just kind of follow more of your passions too, because you have a wider variety of value to offer.
Yeah, it's a good point you bring up that sometimes your greatest weaknesses can be more important than your greatest strengths. It's a good
Yep.
point. It's a good point. And I imagine you say that because when you're aware of your weaknesses, then you can improve.
Yep. And often people don't want to go against you strength for strength. They want to find your biggest weakness and take advantage. And so you have to know your weaknesses so that you can defend against those, because you know that most people don't want to go strength for strength against you in whatever arena it may be for your personal. I'm sure you've faced people in your personal life as well that, you've come across where you're like, oh man, I didn't know that I was weak right there and they got me.
And
We all
it can
have.
also be an ego thing where you don't want your greatest weakness exposed. Because the way I see it is kind of like Spider-Man. You know, as childlike as that sounds, his identity is his greatest secret. He can't let anybody know because that weakness puts everything else in peril. And so in a way,
Hmm.
it's like we're our own Spider-Man, where we have to be able to be aware of that weakness and hide it and figure out how to improve it, or just if there's something you can't do about it, just shut up about it.
Yeah, I would say there's always something you can do and working on it. You know what I mean? It for your analogy, I understand. I think in a more real life scenario, it's there's always something that you can do to improve the situation little by little, 1% every day, and until sometimes your weaknesses become a strength. And that's really the goal.
Yeah. I love how you say that 1% because it's true. However, the reality is a person can be patient in making that improvement 1% day by day, day by day. And it's going to take time. Sometimes it takes time. A lot of times it takes time to see that change actually manifest. But when we're living in the real world, everyone and everything around us is impatient. Things move fast. So, how do you balance out this idea that, change, real change, could quite literally take a lot of time? At the same time, the world around us demands so much more.
I think of it, I think in a very different way than you, in the sense that I feel like there's very few people that are more impatient than I am. And I don't want to be impatient with others. I want to be impatient with myself. So I have all of the, for other people, I have all the patience and time in the world for them to do what they need to do. I want to try and limit myself to depending on others as much as possible, and I want to be impatient with myself. And that's in my business world, not in my personal life, with my family, of course. Now, those are two different worlds. And so when you think of things the way that I do in building companies that are their main goal is to help people, is to put money back in their pockets. It's to save, bad things from happening to them. It's really just trying to make it a lot better for them on a day-to-day basis. It's something where there's so much opportunity and so much change that needs to happen that yes, if it's just 1% every day, that's great. It's not like there's a once you get to 100%, it's done. It's like you're not 100% better. You don't know what the limit is. And so it's like some days I get 20% better, some days I get 1% better, some days I get 1% worse. It's always changing, and it's never perfect, but it's even if I was doing perfect things every single day, all day for the rest of the time till I lived, there would still be so much more to do. And so it's just about understanding that and doing as much as you can and starting to leverage yourself and building a brand and, a way for other people to share your goals and your mission as well. Because if you can inspire others to believe in the same things that you believe in and help other people like you want to help them, then it can really make a big difference.
Yeah. I like that part you said about being impatient with yourself. It signals urgency. It's something that I'm really interested in. And it's just interesting to me that this year, 2026, in the Chinese zodiac is the year of the horse. And just that word, urgency, I pair it with the horse. And I feel like
Hmm.
anybody that really wants to improve, I mean, of course, patience is something in the equation, but urgency is what really gets things moving.
Yeah, and I think, it's being impatient with yourself is you want to be nice to yourself, you want to love yourself, but you also want to hold yourself accountable and being a little impatient. And I personally find myself, I'm always like, feeling like maybe I'm being too lazy, too lazy. It's a constant thought of mine. Okay, well, maybe you're not doing enough, and maybe you're not doing enough. And
And I think
so
that's a good thing for a man, no, to
I
think that
agree.
way,
I
you
agree
know?
100%. It just keeps me going. It's something in the back of my mind. And so and I don't want to be like, "Oh no, you can be lazy." It's like, "No, no, there's other ways to be patient with yourself, and it's you need to keep going." And I mean, I would ask you the same thing. I mean, what kind of thoughts do you kind of carry with you on a day-to-day basis to help you stay motivated and chase your goals?
Good question. These days, I've been thinking a lot about urgency and just making good use of speed. I really believe that speed is a big factor in getting closer to your goals. And I think for a long time in my life, I abided by Let's take things slowly. Let's be patient. There's some wisdom in being patient and slow. And I don't think that's untrue. But at the same time, I think speed is really necessary, especially for a man. It's like you got to figure out when to be fast.
Yeah.
You got to know when to strike like lightning, kind of a thing.
Yep.
So I think that's something I've been focusing on as much as I can. Just speed.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
No, no, I mean, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, what do you think is something where you could, you know, use that in what you're building here?
It's interesting. When I first began, I was releasing like 2 episodes a week, and this went on for months. And so there's like a lot of progress that just went by really quickly in a short period of time. I've slowed down quite a bit because I guess it's just not as big a priority for me anymore. But I do enjoy doing this because I feel like I genuinely believe every person you meet, there's something you can learn from them, whether it be little or big. And I feel like this is a great opportunity for that. It's like it's a place where you could actually have a deeper conversation, like between you and me, and just learn.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
No, I love that. That's amazing.
yeah, I hope so.
That's really cool. You could look back at that one day and go through things and just kind of, always probably take nuggets of wisdom.
Yeah, and it's what's even more interesting is now it's gotten to a point where it's been like 3 years, so I can look back and be like, oh yeah, I remember that guy or I remember that girl. I don't talk to them anymore, and it might not even be bad blood, but it's just I don't talk to them anymore. They're not in my life anymore, but once upon a time we did cross paths, and here's a conversation that's the evidence for it. And maybe you can get like a nugget of something out of that. So, yeah,
Yeah, of course.
yeah. But tell me more about your business ventures. HOA Share. What made
Yeah.
you want to start that? And what's the greatest lesson you've learned from the journey so far?
Well, me and my wife, we've been homeowners and HOA share has been built by a frustrated homeowner, which was myself, in the sense that the HOAs that we've been a part of, which for those who don't know, that's a homeowners association. They manage your neighborhood most of the time when you live in large neighborhoods like I do. They charge you fees to maintain things and keep the neighborhood clean, and there's a lot more that goes into it, but what the frustration was like, who were they really serving? Are they serving the homeowners that live there? Or are they serving themselves? And why is it so expensive? And where does the money go? And it disappears into the ether, and we can't ever trace what's being paid for. Why is it so expensive? Why do dues keep going up? And that frustration really started to send me kind of on a journey to kind of figure out how I could solve that problem. And how we solved the problem was we created the first what we call neighborhood marketplace, and we share revenue from that marketplace with the communities. And it really allows the communities to eliminate the HOA fee. And that's what our goal at HOA Share is to allow communities to thrive while eliminating your HOA dues. And that's by creating a marketplace where homeowners, vendors, professional services can all come together. And in the exchange of goods and services, they'll be able to, make money. And so that's like when you see the painter, when you see the landscaping company, when you see the pool guy, and you're needing all of these services for your homes. It's not going to cost you anything to go on to HOA Shares app that we give our homeowners. They can get the pool guy, get the painter, get the landscaper. And every time they do that, they start to make more and more money with the vendor marketplace and how it's set up. And so vendors are super happy because now they're ingratiated into the community. We verify and we get all of the vendors ready for the community. We make sure that everything is curated and ready for the homeowners as well, and make sure that we're kind of their home operating system, and that's kind of the key there is whenever they need something for their home, they can now go to their HOA, their homeowners association, and the homeowners association is now actually built around you, the homeowner, and serving you, the homeowner. and giving you great vetted vendors and professional services that can help you protest your taxes or get things done around the house, or it can be full home renovations. It can be small little handyman fixes. It can be babysitting. It can be tax help. It's whatever a homeowner needs. We've created that marketplace, and that allows us to now lower the HOA dues by increasing the revenue that the communities are making. And then on top of that, we bring our service to the marketplace for free. So a lot of these HOAs and property management companies can pay hundreds, even thousands of dollars per month for their software, and that's just simply not needed now. And so what I did was I built all the software out, I did all the accounting, all of the things that are needed in order to run a day-to-day business like we do, and make sure that it's all free for the property management companies or the HOAs if they're locally run. And that way they don't have to keep increasing dues for the homeowners that live in those communities. Everything they need is free, and not only that, we're also generating revenue. And so that's how we aim to completely eliminate the HOA bills.
In the context of speed, how long did it take between the idea turning into an action?
Well, turning it into an action happens relatively fast. I like to execute things and kind of go full steam ahead and see what it looks like and constantly pivot. We're a small startup, so we're nimble and we're able to pivot and change things where needed. We're able to bring features up to the forefront or drop features back and wait a little while longer without having to answer to too many people. And so we know that from I would say about 2 years ago when this idea started to now when we're launching and running, it's been pretty exciting. It's been a really fast kind of growth, but in some instances it's been slow in other areas. It's very interesting to kind of live the dualities of some areas fastly growing. We have a ton more clients. We have a huge demand. We have a huge wait list. And then as we're developing features, it can be a little bit slower. It can be a little bit more in depth. It can be a little bit more substantial and the ramifications of what maybe errors or bugs there are. And so it's kind of, fun. And I find it one of my main jobs is to try and balance the two and make sure that we're growing at a consistent speed while making sure that we're offering new and great features to all of the homeowners.
How do you deal with the frustrations of the slow part of the journey?
Oh, you have to have patience for everyone because some things are more complex than others. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
man.
closing a sale for some clients might be super complex, sometimes might be super easy, just like building features might be super easy, might be super complex. You just don't know. And so sometimes you just have to roll with it and know that, everyone's doing their best. There's no one that's just purposely trying to sabotage us.
Yeah, it's interesting to me how everything just kind of goes back to patience and speed.
Yep.
That's literally the human
Smooth is
experience.
fast, fast is smooth.
Yeah, yeah, man. Tell me, well, if I'm not mistaken, Craig, this isn't your first business venture, correct?
I mean, I've been a person that's tried to start lots of companies, whether it be in college, whether it be um, even before that. There's lots of things that I've tried. I think the spirit of an entrepreneur has always had a little bite in me, and so I'm always trying to help people or to kind of explore what ideas and what fits I feel like I can create in systems that I think really just help people. And I look at the world through kind of that kind of lens of, there's just so many norms and customs and systems that people just made up. And it's like it makes no sense how it is this way, and there's so much more efficiency that's out there, and it seems to be so much more related to the systems and the norms and the customs that people just agreed to without ever questioning why are they the way they are. And it leads you down niches. It leads you down, like for me, for instance, an HOA niche. I mean, I didn't know anything about HOA software and I didn't know it's a $30 billion a year industry. I didn't know that, it controls, I think it's 77 million households in just America. It's a lot all over the world, and so it's like there's a lot of people that kind of are in some instances getting taken advantage of, in some instances being misled, and it's like, okay, well, I can help these people, and I kind of all the things in the past that I've tried as well. We're all kind of in that same vein of like, oh, I see a problem in the system and I'm going to try and fix it.
And I like how you've started ventures before, and I imagine, they didn't work, but that's the beauty of the entrepreneurial journey, isn't it? Things that don't work. And I wonder, with all those ventures, what's like the greatest lesson you've extracted from things not working out?
I think it's the never quitting. I think that's everybody thinks that there's going to be just a time where you know for sure that you have to quit, and there's not. You're almost trying to convince yourself to quit just to make the others around you happier. And you have to ignore the noise around you and say that like you're just not going to quit no matter what, because at the end of the day, you know what you're doing and you believe in yourself, and you're going to either die or you're going to make it work. Because you can always go get that 9 to 5 job. You can always go do something that just, makes those people around you happy, but then you're not making yourself happy. And that's not what anyone really wants. You want to make yourself happy. You want to help other people. You want to follow your goals. And so, just never quitting, no matter what it is. If it's a small problem, if it's a huge decision, if it's like what I do, risking everything for building companies. I mean, it's just never quitting, because you can work harder than everyone else, and get unlucky. Just never quit, because your time's going to come.
Now, that's fascinating to me because the world is full of paradoxical truths. I love the idea, don't quit, never quit. And I do believe in it. At the same time, I think at certain parts of a person's journey, they should quit because they should realize, hey, maybe this is a dead end. A question I've had for years that I can't seem to quite get an answer for yet is, when should a person know to take their chips off the table? Is there any one blanket answer for, hey, it's time for you to
Well,
move on
don't
from this direction?
don't quit doesn't mean don't start something new. And that's super important to understand, is that just because you're focused on something and you're doing something and you're maybe getting frustrated and you're literally trying to convince yourself to quit, and you got someone like me over here saying, don't quit, don't quit. That doesn't mean don't also try something new. That doesn't mean that you're not giving 24 hours a day to this thing that isn't working. You know, you want to be smart with your time. You want to not give up on your goals. You want to be 1% better. But that doesn't mean you have to give 24 hours of a 24-hour day to this subject matter of whatever it is. And so don't quit doesn't mean don't start something new that might be more successful, that might help you come back to this idea and fix or solve the problems that were hard to overcome at whatever point that was.
I
Just
think
because
what
you're
you
trying
said
something new
just
doesn't
made
mean,
me,
this thing dies. You can have multiple things.
yeah, I think what you said just made me think of the answer, which is just move your chips to a different table. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah. You got to give yourself a chance. No one else is taking chances. And so constantly take chances. Take multiple chances. Take a ton of chances. You're going to get 7, 8, 20, 30, whatever. You're going to get so many things wrong. It just takes one time getting one thing right. And everything can change for you and your family and everyone that you know.
You ever embarrassed of falling down, making a
Oh,
mistake?
yeah. Oh, yeah. All the time.
How do you deal with that, man?
You just have to know that it comes with the game of trying to, do you want to live a comfortable life?
Yeah.
Or do you want to be uncomfortable and actually change and do things that no one was willing to work hard enough to do before, or think about to do before, or take on or challenge the given authority or whatever it may be. Going against the grain is something that is almost fun at this point.
I like that part there. I like that. Yeah, it's interesting, all the things you've been sharing, Craig. I want to pivot a little bit to one of my favorite conversations I've had with you. And it was about, being a parent, about being a father.
Yeah.
You said for your kids, it's kind of like, well, I'll let you explain it. You were talking to me about it with an example of Pokemon and how a Pokemon evolves over time.
Yeah.
Do you remember that conversation? And if you do you mind explaining that analogy?
Well, I don't remember exactly what I said at that time, but the evolution of the Pokemon, it definitely was something that does make a lot of sense to me in our kids, and that they grow in stages, and you have different relationships with them at different ages. And it's so important, to me to make time for my kids, because they are more important than my businesses. They're more important than anything to me. And kind of growing and teaching and learning with them is the best thing ever. And so yeah, no, I love talking about them.
Well, the thing that I really liked from the conversation we had was the example you were giving is, when you have kids, it's like uh your life changes in the sense that your focus is on them now. What makes them
Yeah.
happy? What are their needs? How do I meet that? And you were saying like, I felt like before having kids, it's like, maybe you're like a Charmander. And when you have kids, like now you're a Charizard. You've evolved,
Hmm.
and now you have like more power, more ability to focus on different things. And I like
Yeah.
that example where it's like now it's the needs, the focus shifts.
Yeah. No, it definitely is. It definitely is. And it's something that like you feel inside where it's like you know it's the most important thing to you. You're not just like, oh, I need to pay attention to them. I need to focus on It's like, no, that's all you're thinking about. It's like, what are they doing? What are they thinking about? How can I make things better? Is this enough? Is this too much? What's going on? It's making sure that they've got the best opportunities is always super important. And also making sure that they're, facing challenges on their own and growing on their own, and you're not doing too much as well. So it's a constant kind of scale, and you're balancing on that beam, and you're going back and forth. But oh yeah, it's the greatest.
Yeah. Tell me about your relationship with regrets.
Oh, I mean, there's just too many of them, but you don't make it to where you are now without everything that you've done, because everything that you've done has led you to this exact point where you are now. And without us, exactly doing things the way I'd unfortunately done some things in the past, it is what it is. I mean, I think everybody has regrets, whether they were monumental at the time in your head, and now when you look back, you're like, oh, that was just a breakup, or oh man, that was just, not being friends with someone again, or oh man, that was just a business relationship that didn't end well. At the time, you thought it was so big or so important, and you look back on it now, and you're like, oh, that was just part of the journey. That was just a stepping stone,
Yeah.
and it led me to where I am now. And so, whether it's regrets or whether it's, self-disappointment, you're like, try and take the high road as much as possible. And, we're not perfect. So it is what
Yeah.
it is,
That being
that's where
said,
we go.
what do mistakes build inside of a person? What do they build inside of you?
I
In
think
one
it builds
word,
character.
what do they build inside of you?
I think it builds character.
Character.
Yep.
Cliche, but true, right? And
Yeah.
that's what truths are, cliche. Eh?
Yeah. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And
Malcolm
I think
X, there you go.
regrets make you kind of know what you're not going to fall for. So
Yeah.
in turn, that means you know what you're going to stand for.
Wait, say the last part again. Regrets make you what?
I feel like regrets make you know what you shouldn't fall for anymore. The
Oh,
cheap temptation, the easy way out, the low road, and there's no what that essentially also means is you know what you're going to stand for, and then that's doing the right thing.
yeah. I like that, man. When you said that, it made me think of like a tree and like regrets just being dead branches. You got to burn off that dead wood. It's like a
Yeah,
signal. Yeah. Good
Oh yeah.
stuff. But Craig, I really enjoyed this conversation with you, and I'm
Yeah,
curious,
man.
do you have any closing thoughts? Anything you felt like you wanted to say we didn't get a chance to, or something on your mind you wanted to express?
No, I would say, it was great talking to you as well. I didn't really know how this was going to go. This has been very nice, and I hope that, there's someone out there that would, gain some help from this, know that you got to chase your goals. You got to do as much as you can because we only get one life to live, and we got to make the best of it before it's too late and before too many people quit. You got to inspire others. You got to inspire yourself. And that's how we're all going to make a change.
I love that. Thank you.
Awesome.
Well,
Well,
I
you have a
suppose
great
until
one.
next time, man.
All right. I'll see you soon. You have a good one.